Story 1. No one prepares you for carrying invisible weight. The constant pressure to make the right choices while knowing every decision shapes not just your life but others' lives too. That silent responsibility can feel isolating, and learning to accept imperfection amid it all is the hardest, most freeing lesson adulthood demands. Story 2. Dishonesty. Many people will throw you under the bus or not own their actions rather than face the consequences of what they have done. When challenged, the usual response is to double down and blame you rather than seek a fair solution. If people owned their mistakes more, the world would be much easier to navigate. Story 3. Getting to the age where you are no longer sure of what is the best thing to say. When I was young, I spoke with an almost blind confidence. Through the years, I have found it more difficult to give advice and to speak confidently. My mind always comes up with a devil's advocate to what I am about to say. Story 4. The modern job market. To be fair, I do not think anyone would have predicted how things are now when I was a child. It was a very different world. Story 5. The fact that hard work, well-researched thought processes, and integrity do not matter at all in terms of success. The only thing that matters is how much other people, especially those in positions of power like you, not genuine kindness either, if that kindness is delivered in a way others find unpleasant in the moment. Not helpfulness if they interpret your desire to help as servile. Just the impression they form in their own minds. I am an autistic woman, so my perspective will be very different from most people's. Story 6. Constant decisions, thousands each day, all day, every day. If you make the wrong one, the consequences could be catastrophic. No one knows exactly what they are doing. We are all improvising and hoping to do the right thing. Story 7. My gosh, once you buy a house, there is always something to fix. I had no idea how much constant repainting, power washing, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning technician calls, drain clearing, and carpet cleaning I would have to do for the rest of my life. Story 8. When you are a child, most of your achievements are ranked on a discrete scale that has a clear ceiling. As an adult, there is no ceiling to what you could potentially achieve, and the opportunities to compare yourself to others who are more successful are endless. The upper echelons of society are many tiers above me. If I thought of that as getting an A in life, it would be tough to imagine myself even getting a D. A house cat has a statistically similar level of achievement to me when compared to the world's elite. Story 9. How expensive it is to have a dog. They require many supplies in addition to medical care, grooming, and food. Story 10. How to establish my own boundaries and enforce them. How to value myself when a partner does not. How to walk away from people you love when they do terrible things to you. Story 11. No one has a job they like. At first, you think it's not true because people brag about a job, talk about perks, vacations, cars, new houses. Yet, as the decades pass, I see everyone quitting, burning out, looking for new jobs, stepping back. Then they admit that their job was toxic. They did things they weren't comfortable with or proud of. I know college-educated people who had great careers and now work entry-level jobs. They hate it, but they like that it is over when it is over. Decades of very little time away from work. Weekends spent on housework. Taking medication for depression and anxiety. Story 12. Managing credit. I got into a lot of trouble because I was never taught about credit. Given the fact that they issue 19% interest credit cards to newly minted 18-year-olds is wild. Story 13. Watching your loved ones grow old, become ill, and pass away. Realizing the near impossibility of maintaining health, appearance, and stamina once you reach a certain age. Story 14. Nazis. In high school history class, it sounded like one of those things that I was never going to have to worry about. Story 15. You can do whatever you want, meaning you now have to figure out what you need to do rather than being told, and then make yourself do it. Story 16. Sudden death of those closest to you is not often discussed in terms of managing end-of-life care, post-death logistics, and memorial or funeral planning. For many, it happens unexpectedly. Yes, people die, and many experience it in different ways. Many are unprepared when it is a parent, parents, or closest friend, and a lot of responsibility falls on them. Handling death and responsibilities while grieving is an incredible burden. Story 17, chronic pain. I never learned about it as a kid, probably because disabled people get so little cultural exposure. I learned very little about it in medical school either. The message was that most people in chronic pain are just drug-seeking. Such a distorted, incorrect, and damaging message to give future doctors. I had the impression that if you were in horrible pain, it would either kill you or get better. It turns out you can be alive and be in awful pain daily for decades. Story 18. Teenagers scare me a lot. They could care less as long as someone will bleed. My Chemical Romance. They have nothing to lose, are much more impulsive, and are rarely held accountable. Do not mess with teenagers as an adult. Story 19. How much does it cost to have a roof over your head and food in the refrigerator, along with all the necessary paperwork? Story 20. The whole world is full of people who never grew out of gossiping and talking negatively about everyone around them, and it is not a small minority. I truly thought that after high school, people generally matured into respecting one another. So naive. Story 21. What to cook for dinner. Coming home from work, there is food in both the pantry and the refrigerator, but sometimes it is hard to think of what to make. That is an everyday struggle. Story 22. Family being endlessly stingy, greedy, and experiencing schadenfreude, taking pleasure in others' misfortune. Absolutely and purely evil with physical, verbal, and psychological abuse, especially by proxy through my dad from my sister. Story 23. You are experiencing a mental health condition, and you may not realize it. This can negatively affect you and your relationships until you address it. Story 24. No one told me just how unstructured adulthood is. Your entire 20s are a new chapter of finding yourself. Story 25. Living with the consequences of your own preventable failures. How much of that falls squarely on you and how much is a product of circumstance varies, but you still have to live with it. For example, my teeth are in poor condition. On one hand, there is a genetic factor. On another, there is the fact my parents did not raise me properly, barely took me to the dentist, and did not make me brush at night. On the third hand, I should have fixed that sometime during my early adulthood. The end result is I am 45 with 4 missing teeth and none that do not wiggle at all. That is something I have to live with now. There is no fixing it. I should have been better with money. I should have taken better care of my body. I should have put more focus on my mental health. I should have put more work into maintaining relationships. Story 26. This is difficult to put into words, but it reflects the overall reality of work and capitalism, especially regarding burnout and the need for mental rest. Stress slowly destroys you. Story 27. The transition from being young and having my parents to watching them pass away as I got older is indescribable. I sat with my father for 2 days, on January 15th this year, as he weakened. I am still young, only 40 at the time. Saying goodbye to your parents forever takes your breath away. Story 28. Joint pain and back pain. The human body is not built to last. Take care of your bodies and minds, children. Story 29. Being violently sick when you are alone. I had no groceries, and the trip to the grocery store felt like a Roman Polanski movie. Story 30. Not me, but about some people in my inner circle. You might be extremely well educated in a field, love the work and do it well, yet no one wants to hire you. Story 31. Dealing with many people in positions of authority who lack education, training, ability, and critical thinking necessary to make informed choices is challenging. Learning how to navigate these individuals safely, professionally, and effectively has been a 20-year struggle. Story 32. It is really hard to plan for the future when the rules of the game radically change every 5 years. Maybe that is less of an adult problem and more of a 21st century problem. Story 33. How to live in today's economy when your full-time professional level job is not enough to support your family. Story 34. How lonely it is. You are at the office all day but barely talk to coworkers because you are so overwhelmed with work or they are just not very friendly. You get home after an hour-long commute and wish you could have dinner with a friend, but you are too tired to go out into the world again. So you just sit and scroll, looking at all these people who seem so happy, and you wonder what you are doing wrong. By the time the weekend comes, you have to spend all day Saturday running errands and doing things around the house. On Sunday, you have to prepare meals and do laundry. Then you just repeat. So lonely. So empty. No way out. Story 35. Mental growing pains. Coming to terms with moving forward in life can be difficult, even when everything is going well. Story 36. Dirty dishes. No matter what I do, there are always dirty dishes. It is just me and my cat. I come home from work and there are dishes. I wake up and there are dishes. I clean the dishes and there are still dishes. How does this even happen? I am convinced the cat is having lavish brunch parties while I am at work. Story 37. Clear direction, I suppose. All the way up until college, you are pretty much told what to do and how to do it. Once you are out of school and working for a few years, you realize that society stops telling you what to do, which can be freeing but also terrifying. I know people who have literally jumped into graduate school and Doctor of Philosophy programs because it was a clearer path for them. Story 38. The health issues are overwhelming. Plantar fasciitis, hip dysplasia, neck pain, leg pain, constant stomach aches, and headaches. It is exhausting. Story 39. How very long it is until retirement. You start so energized and willing to work such an extreme schedule and give it all you have and beyond for the sake of the company and your career, day in and day out, for so very long. Story 40. Dealing with elderly parents. Trying to manage surgeries and health emergencies for both my husband's parents and my parents, all of whom had at least one stroke in the summer of 2023, is very complicated. I had to call Adult Protective Services on my dad because my mom was in the hospital after a stroke, and he refused to get checked out when he thought he was having another stroke himself, which he actually was experiencing. Guardianship of a parent is difficult for everyone, so I consulted a lawyer to be prepared if anything happens with my mom. However, my mother-in-law has been uncooperative and refuses to address basic issues in her home that would help with her lack of mobility, as well as her health. Story 41. We all hear people telling us to take care of ourselves physically as we grow up. Once you start doing it in your 30s and 40s because the metabolism and resilience of your teenage years and 20s has worn off, you cannot stop. This is a constant now, and if you do not, you risk bigger health issues. And that is if you can make the time to get to the gym. Story 42. Having to make breakfast, lunch, and dinner for multiple people every single day for the rest of my life. Also, dusting. How does everything get so dusty? Story 43. The hardest thing about getting older is watching friends and loved ones die. It is something I never thought about, and I am reaching the age when it happens frequently. Story 44. Trying to figure out how insurance works. Why won't you tell me what it will cost before I go to the doctor so that I will know if I have it in my budget? Also, just the cost of doctors in general. I finally got a new therapist and I am having to decide if I want to cut my food budget and have the recommended once-weekly sessions, or tell her I can only afford monthly. Story 45. Depression and poor mental health. As an adult, it feels like there is nothing to do except battle through it or give up. People are only supportive if you are high-functioning. As soon as your mental health causes you to become a burden, you are cast aside. Story 46. How much I worry about my children and now grandchildren, and how much I miss them when I do not see them for a few days. Story 47. The fact that you spend so much time deciding what to eat, buying it, and preparing it, but mainly discussing the plans. Also, how long things take to prepare. Story 48. When the parent who does everything for the other, like my mom, dies and you need to take care of the remaining parent, it can be very challenging. I love my dad and would never put him in a nursing home after witnessing terrible experiences firsthand. However, there is a feeling of being extremely scared of failing him, making poor financial decisions, losing the house, and so on. That sense of childhood security is gone. Story 49. How to not care. The world is not going to end if you decide to just say it is not working to your advantage. Self-care is extremely important, and most adults just power through thinking it is what they have to do. Story 50. The way your body gradually betrays you. I was at the airport the other day. The bag drop-off line was almost empty, but they had those stanchions and ropes you had to snake your way through. My son just ducked under them and went to the end. I remember looking at the rope and realizing, nope, can't do that anymore. I don't know what day I became a decrepit old man, but it snuck up on me. Story 51. Having to deal with fully grown adult children and adults who have no interest in addressing their mental health problems and traumas. Story 52. Never-ending responsibility. I never thought adults in my life would be dependent on me until the day I die. I am exhausted. Story 53. I would say time management and balancing everything in your life, especially work and rest. Story 54. Having to feed the children dinner every day. Why do they have to eat dinner every day? Can't we just have popcorn and red wine and call it a night? Story 55. Finances. I make $140,000 a year, and I still do not know how to budget. I buy on impulse. I wish I were more financially savvy. Story 56. Navigating a sudden divorce with children involved is challenging. There is so much collateral that it is hard to start processing everything. Money aside, if someone has good advice from experience, I am open to it. Story 57. Ensuring that you provide the people you are responsible for with as many opportunities for success as possible, and feeling disappointed if they do not succeed despite your best efforts to help them. Then, taking those failures and turning them into learning experiences. Interpret this as you wish. I could be referring to parenting or managing people. I am actually talking about both, and as both a parent and a manager, I have learned that they are very similar. Story 58. Parenting everybody. My teenager came into my work the other day during chaos, and after things calmed down, he looked at me and said, "So you're basically just the mom here too." I wanted to argue, but it is accurate. No one will eat the vegetables in the work fridge until I cut them into cute little snack-sized bites and provide dressing. It is basically just parenting adults. Story 59. Feeding myself. I love food, and I generally enjoy cooking. But working a dull part-time job while also attending university full-time has made it a chore. To ease some of my stress around deciding what to eat, I set up a ramen cart at home. I prepare marinated eggs and vegetables once a week. I prepare and portion the meat once every 2 weeks and freeze it. If I or my teenagers do not want to or do not have time to cook, or if I am overwhelmed with decisions, all I have to decide is what ramen I want and go from there. We even have a checkout sheet to keep track of who likes what and which options are not popular, so I know what to pick up at the market. So far, it works well, and I am less anxious about feeding the household when I am mentally exhausted. Story 60. As a child, I always thought adults portrayed themselves as smarter than they were. Sadly, I was right. Story 61. Dealing with insurance issues. When I was younger, I knew you went to the doctor, paid a $20 copay, and went on with your life. Later, I had university health insurance and had little need to use it. As an older adult, I have had to deal with insurance not correctly billing my broken ankle and mistakenly thinking I would have to pay $24,000 for it. I got that fixed. Insurance sent me a check, then a duplicate check. I cashed only one of them and later received a letter saying they wanted the money back and then sent it to collections while my payment was in transit. Most recently, the local hospital billed my prior insurance, which was still reported as active even past the termination date, instead of my current insurance despite my request not to bill the prior. Then my wife lost her job and our insurance and was unable to get on state insurance because we did not have loss of coverage documentation yet. I also faced issues with taxes for flexible spending account contributions because it was not apparent that we could only use $5,000 per year. Insurance and anything to do with taxes or tax savings can be very complicated. Story 62. Realizing I was essentially raised by adults who cannot take accountability for being abusive and manipulative. Story 63. How much of a pain having a car is. It is not just the cost of insurance and payments. It is taking it to the mechanic anytime something happens and it suddenly disrupts your finances. It is scratches and dents because people do not pay attention when parking, getting out of parking, or entering and exiting their cars. It is getting new tires. It is the annual inspection. The price of gas goes down 1 week and then goes up 2 weeks in a row. Just decide on a price already. I have a car out of necessity. I need it to go to work and to buy groceries. I basically do not use it otherwise. And just because of that, it is an extra headache. Invent teleportation already. Story 64. During school, your homework is homework. During the rest of your life, your homework is bills you need to keep track of, pay on time, schedule doctor's appointments, dental visits, plan hangouts because your schedule and your friends' schedules are different, and cooking. It is tiring. Story 65. Medical issues. Like every month, it's something new. I had never even heard the word gout until I got it. The nurse practitioner treated me like everyone knew what it was, and she was the same age as me. I knew irritable bowel syndrome existed but thought that my iron stomach would last forever. Migraines? Please. I threw my back out once in high school, lifting like 1,000,000 pounds. I was better the next day like it never happened. I'm still laying on the floor from reaching too high in the cabinet 3 days ago. Hard to urinate, and yet I have to go every hour? I've had a doctor's visit every week for the last 6 months. Sleep apnea, insomnia, epilepsy. You'd assume I was overweight, ate poorly, and never left my couch. Absolutely not. I work out 3 to 4 times a week. I basically only eat chicken and fish for meat. Good fiber, no added sugar or salt. 1 to 2 cups of coffee 4 to 5 days a week. I don't smoke or drink. Pizza once a month that is dairy-free now. Boring family medical history. I haven't even hit 40 yet. People my parents' age are all like, yeah, so. Story 66. Credit cards. My parents paid mine until they passed away. My oldest brothers and sister took over and paid them out of my trust until they all died. I am now in my mid-30s and just realized that credit cards are not unlimited money. You actually have a limit and you must pay them back. Story 67. Being young and not having the time and money to enjoy life. 5 days a week are work. When I get home, I am exhausted and just want to eat and sleep. The weekends are a mess, so those 2 days feel useless. Story 68. Finding out that being in network does not cover everyone in the hospital is common. For example, the hospital may be in network, but the anesthesiologist or radiologist may not be. This can result in a surprise bill from the same visit. Is there any reliable way to prevent this besides calling 3 times beforehand? Story 69. Your children growing up and moving out. I know that was the goal, but now I look back and wish I could have more time with them as kids. Story 70. How to deal with other people never minding their own good business, especially about stuff that has no impact on them whatsoever. For example, why does Karen care so much if I don't shave my legs? Why does Kyle care so much if I don't lift weights like he does? Therapy has helped me deal with this situation, but nobody prepared me for it when I was growing up. Quite the opposite. I was taught only to care about what other people thought. I'm still trying to break the last links in that ball and chain. Live and let live. Story 71. The long, random hairs that seem to grow overnight, and you wonder why there is a 3-inch hair growing out of your arm. Story 72. How to be sick and take care of yourself when alone. How to appropriately cook and feed myself while meeting nutritional needs. For the first year or two of adulthood, I honestly just used a countertop George Foreman grill to press a slab of chicken or steak, then drank an Ensure. Also, one of the most common issues among my peers is buying clothes and understanding different fabrics. I will be 25 this autumn. About 2 years ago, half my wardrobe had holes or was falling apart, but a few pieces were not. It may sound like common sense, but in a world consumed by materialism and overconsumption, it really is not. The only clothes not falling apart were the items made from 100% natural fabrics. I researched natural fabrics versus synthetics and learned which natural fabrics work better for different types of clothing and seasons. Now, I am slowly replacing my entire wardrobe at a snail's pace because I am poor, but I live by the motto, buy once, cry once. Story 73. Having a beloved wife in her 80s develop illnesses that require constant care after many decades of happy marriage. Story 74. How to deal with the body of a deceased pet. When a human dies, you can call emergency services and professionals come to handle the body. When a pet dies, especially during the odd hours of the night, there are 24-hour emergency services to manage those remains. There have been occasions where I have had to keep deceased cats in a box for a day until the pet funeral home opened. Now that I think about it, I cannot imagine what people with large dogs do. What do you do if your big dog passes away and there is nowhere open at the time to handle the remains? It is traumatizing. No one talks about this. Story 75. When elderly parents begin to deteriorate mentally and physically, there is only one who serves as the primary caregiver, no matter how many siblings. Story 76. Everyday chores are boring and must be done continuously to keep up. You have to go to work and endure challenges day in and day out. Shopping, cooking, cleaning, and paying bills, you must keep doing them endlessly. Story 77. Most people complaining are wrong about everything. Maybe they think if they keep talking, nobody will notice that they are the problem. Story 78. Everything changes when you have children. I was very independent and had been through a lot in my youth, so becoming an adult was scary at times, but I was okay. The responsibility of children is another level that I didn't grasp until I had them. As a mother, the responsibility is on me. As an adult, if I made a mistake, then I paid the price. But as a mother, if I make a mistake, then my children will suffer. There is no one to pick up the slack or share the responsibility with me. Story 79. When I was a child, I thought adults were smart. Now I am an adult, and most of us are less intelligent than when we were children. Story 80. Being sick and how bad America is. I was always told it was the greatest country ever, but it is not even in the top 10. Story 81. Realizing how many important things are beyond our control. As a child, I thought there was nothing my parents could not fix. That was a delusion, of course, but I doubt I could ever create the same impression of being almighty for my own children. Story 82. Miscarriages occur in about 1 in 4 women. You can do everything right, and sometimes it just does not happen. We had no idea it was that common and were not really thinking it was even remotely likely. We experienced 2 miscarriages during our first few years of marriage. Story 83. Being in love but not being loved back was the hardest thing I had to learn on my own as an adult. Story 84. I used to be with it, but then they changed what it was. Now what I am with is not it anymore, and what it is seems weird and scary. I am doing my part to warn future generations that this will happen to them too. Story 85. Absolute overstimulation and tiredness. It feels like there is no time to relax as an adult, and every day is a never-ending list of things to do. I remember adults being tired and grumpy occasionally. I understand it fully now. Even days off are for domestic work. There are literally only a couple of days in a year when you can actually do nothing and relax. Story 86. Having my period. My mom never gave me any hint. I came home from school, went to the bathroom, and screamed at the blood in my pants. Even then, she did little more than give me Kotex and say it would be all right, natural, and that I was a young lady now. Ugh. Story 87. Realizing that almost every institution to which you can devote time, money, love, or hope is a scam. Most people only want to contribute to change by doing nothing but talking, and even then, most do not understand what they are talking about. Story 88. The frustrations that come with renting a home include leases, landlords, 48-hour notices that someone unknown might enter through my locked door, and a lot of extra money spent on unnecessary fees. Story 89. Even though we teach children that they cannot get what they want by throwing a fit, adults are accommodated when they do. Story 90. How frustrating it is to constantly decide what groceries to buy and what to make for dinner every day, especially as a single person, because it is almost impossible to buy items like cauliflower, spinach, and lettuce without at least half going to waste, since I cannot eat it all in time. Story 91. The number of deceased friends you are likely to have by the age of 30 is significant. This appears to be the case with most people I know nowadays. I was exposed to death at an early age, but I never expected to attend so many services while still so young. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.